how many people do you think are diabetic in your household or people that you know? Take a guess and send me a message on our WhatsApp number 077 Now, of course, the question is, how many South Asians they suffer from diabetes? It's quite a astonishing percentage compared to the non-South Asian people in the city of Leicester or London or wherever you are. Practically, this figure is pretty much the same. The South Asians are prone more to diabetes than anybody else in the whole country. Now, of course, this has a huge impact on your body, on your whole lifestyle. Your eating pattern has to change completely. And this was one of the very interesting programs yesterday, which the brother Kirit, he went through, and 1 hour was just not enough to cover the subject of diabetes, nutrition, and all that comes along with diabetes, which is heart disease, kidney failure, and so many other health problems. It's a what they call a slow killer. It can take a period of 20 years, but it's a declining one. So to adapt, to live with it, you must be aware and take advantage of all the centers around you that are there to help you, to guide you, to take you forward and support your journey in diabetes. If you don't follow that, then you will have problems, and you can catch diabetes when you are young, anytime from the age of 3 or 4 or 5, where you will be insulin dependent, or you can catch it when you are 40. So the brother was saying that he particularly noticed that he was diabetic when he was 40 years old. Of course, you don't even know. Many of you are walking around, you haven't done the corrective test, and you don't even know that you are diabetic. So what is the symptom? You'll feel tired, you'll drink a lot of water, you'll be going toilet. Normally, if you're going toilet twice a day, you'll be going 4 times a day or 5 times a day. So that is a very good indicator. And if you can start there and help each other in your family, in your friend circle, you'll be better for it. So this is very, very important. So this week, practically throughout the week, we are meeting people who are associated in the world of education. So our guests each week are in different sectors. This week we are focusing on education and health. Well, education, the merits of education from nursery, primary, secondary, right up to university, and then off you go along and start your journey of life in your work environment. So this, we're meeting many interesting people throughout the week who are in this subject of education and health. And today, approximately 9 thereabouts, we're going to meet one of our guests today. She will introduce herself, and she's going to talk to you about secondary schools today. That's what she's going to talk about, and she's going to enlighten us about her particular experiences. And you can also contact us by WhatsApp, or you can even call in and discuss with us where you are with the education, in your own education experience, and also what you would like to see in our education. What change would you like to see? If you were the education minister today in England, would you make any changes? How would you talk to the establishment, and what changes would you like to make? So that is very important for us to know, so we can share ideas from all across the board. So is education today coping with all the different diversities? Well, let me tell you something. When the Ugandan Asians came here in 1972, of course, we talk a lot about 1972 because it's the year, 50 years of commemoration, celebration, appreciation of the Ugandan Asians. So that 50 years have passed now. In 1972, when we came here, well, we were put into some special schools in the city of Leicester, there was one school that was set up, which is today called Crown Hills, but adjacent to that, a school was built to accommodate the influx of people from Uganda, and that was called the Wakerley Secondary School, which then got absorbed 10 years later to be called Crown Hills. So it all became one school. But the new part and the new building in that sector was the school that was built very fast, probably the fastest school that was ever built in the city. So those of you, if you remember that period, then put your right hand up and let me know, or even call in and talk to us about your experience if you ever went to that school, which was on, you can call us on 077 488 055. That's our WhatsApp number. But if you wish to call in, you can call in on 0116 482 2086. So each decade, we've had different refugees or immigrants come into the city. Well, why do they come? There's always a reason. They're probably got issues in the country they were at, financial issues, poverty issues. Most probably, the reasons are always victims of war. So they have to flee persecution. As you are learning today what's happening in Ukraine, a war has kicked off there, and a lot of people are getting out of Ukraine and being absorbed into other countries. What is the impact of that? What is the impact of any refugee coming into any country? What the government has to do is accommodate them, pay money for all the costs, and it's an ongoing problem. It's been happening since the beginning of time. So I can only relate to the period 72 because I was one of them with my family. And when you come here, you start again. Your life is zero, you have nothing. And you then start again to build up your life. And we were young, but our parents, my father, he was in absolute stress mode, and he went through the whole journey of stress, anxiety, and depression and disorder. And many people of that age, a survey was carried out, research was carried out at the university, and they clearly learned that people from that era who were of the age of 40 to 50, they absolutely followed up with a lot of issues, health issues, because that is the impact of the disorders that you will experience mentally. And in the 70s, there were not any mental health or any centers available that were there to help you, because not enough was understood at that time about this particular subject, and a lot of people suffered. So this is going back, but go on another 10 years, we had other refugees coming in from different countries. Go on another 90s, we had different refugees. Each decade there have been different refugees who have influxed into the UK. So I'm only profiling 50 years, but what do we have in 2020 onwards? Well, we had COVID, and after COVID, like of recent, what do you hear in the news all of the time? You hear about all the refugees who are proposing to come to England from Ukraine. And you can see the impact of that why are they having an easy ride, and why other refugees were left on the seas to drown. So why? The question is why? I want you all to ask that questions to yourselves. Why is that happening? And then what have I encouraged you to do in the first week? Start connecting with your MP, write to him, and ask him that question amongst any other questions that you have on education, on health, on well-being. We can only do this together. We can't do this individually. One individual opinion will always remain one person's opinion. But if our MPs, if you don't connect with them, then you will not be able to progress with your good initiative. So imagine if we put out 10 good initiatives and at least one of them or two of them get adhered to, listened to, then we'll have made a difference. So everybody has got something to say about all matters. But if you engage, So first thing gotta do is wake up, dress up, and show up. So by that I mean send me a text or a WhatsApp on 077 Our theme this week is health and education. Health and well-being will be the theme throughout the month because we can't emphasize enough the value of health and well-being. So every topic that we cover, the element of health will always be there for us today, tomorrow, and forevermore. We must always pay attention to that and help each other, remind each other, and particularly the elderly in our community, the vulnerable. It's a month of giving. So in Ramadan, I was very, very pleased to see that the Peace Center, the team there is what I call the sustainable crew. Why? Because they're all young people. They've joined that Peace Center from a very early age and they are still there. So some of them I met here on Sunday, started there when they were 8 years old, 9 years old, and today they're much older and they are still there. So that is the foundation of the Peace Center, is very early they engage young people. So young people, when you're 8, you can't just wake up and say, Mom, Dad, I want to go to the Peace Center today. It ain't going to happen like that. What's going to happen is that the parents, they have to change their mindsets. So the parent today, your responsibilities are even greater than your mother and father. So good parenting is all about the parents taking the initiative to say, I want to take my son, my daughter to the Peace Center. And all of the centers out there, I will urge you to add the element of education to your programs that you have. Any education is going to be the key USP. Your unique selling point is going to be what you offer children in terms of education, because every parent is aspiring to support their child in education wherever they are in the world. If you're all over across India, you will hear thousands and millions of stories where the mother and father, they will eat dal and one roti throughout the week just so that they can put money aside for their children's education, because that is the value they place on education, that the mother and father would sooner go without and ensure that their children get out of the cycle of poverty. So much importance is placed on education. So every center, please take note of that. Now, this month, in the month of Ramadan, we are making a list of good community centers or community organizations. I want us to make a list of at least 20 of them that can engage with us and we can create partnerships for them. So we already have 2 or 3. We want to do at least 20 of them so that throughout Ramadan or after Ramadan, we can work together with them. We have great ideas to share with all of these 20 organizations in the community, and every organization is an asset. There are assets in the community. So that I was reminded yesterday that why don't we do that program and called Assets in the Community. Of course, we have got many other programs that are also doing some good work highlighting the community assets that we have in the community. So that's why maybe the name is different, but the work is the same. Assets in the Community was a program that we started about 2 or 3 years ago. It was on Saturday mornings, and each week we would highlight one person who was an asset in the community. So we will make note of all these assets. Quite a few of them have come here, join us on the radio. So I will join you very shortly after a small break, short break, and I would like you to join us and we'll meet our guest, talk about secondary schools. Jazakallah khair. Walaikum salam, sister. Come join. Come to my office. You got a choice. You can sit here or you can sit there. All right, so you can see the screen from there, right? So when you're on the mic, well, you've been before, haven't you? Okay, so not kissing it, but close to it. If you're not close to it, there will be echo, right? So just a quick brief between you and I. We have 3 minutes. Which are you teaching in the school?
No, I work in the attendance and transition and behaviour.
Where?
I
At?
don't teach at Beecham City Sixth Form.
Yeah, I know sixth form in Ordby. Yeah.
Sorry?
At the Ordby in Ordby.
No, the one they've opened a new one in the city centre.
What's it called?
Beecham City Sixth Form.
Okay, so when I introduce you, well, you're going to introduce yourself.
Yeah,
right?
I won't mention the place where I work, just in case for any
yeah. So what you say,
I just
that
work in
you're working in the field of education in transition,
yeah,
right? You don't have to, what you just mentioned,
yes, yeah.
and explain more of that when we do the introduction, right?
Okay.
Explain more of that so that people, they'll never have heard of this place. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, we are back on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. Good morning to you all. I hope that you are awake now and you're fully active. So you're listening to Z on the Rise and Shine, Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. You can call us on 0116 482 2086 or you can WhatsApp us on 077 48 855 055. Of course, there are many ways you can listen to us this morning or tomorrow or the day after on your iOS or your Android app on your phone. So, Jazakallah khair. We have Margoob Musavi. Of course, that name is very familiar. One of our regular listeners. He's tuned in on time, every time. So, assalamu alaikum to you, brother. And you'll have to send us a message and tell our producer, we've got a new producer here in the studio, where you're from, because he's wondering right now, oh, where is this name from? Which country? So you see this station, it goes all over, everywhere. In fact, we had a message on Saturday. We did a program, and a listener from Ireland, he said, when are you going to get an Irishman on the radio during Ramadan? And he was listening in from Dublin. So you see, people will probably wonder, well, who's listening? Listeners are everywhere today. We live in local, national, global world that we live in, and everyone is connected to each other. And this is digitization for you, brothers and sisters. Now, how does that affect our education system? So that digitization has filtered into every walk of life. There is not a place that is not working with digital technology today. So we're going to talk a lot about that, because that is something we have to adapt to very fast. And what are the new things happening? So each morning I'm going to be talking to you about some new things that are happening across the globe in terms of digitization. Are we ready for that? Are we not ready for that? But we need to adapt to that change. Some of us will not see that period, but those of us young people who are here in the city, in the country, they will embrace these changes, and they will be taking them on very easily, because for them it will be something that it will like a glove. Everything for them will be very easy to adapt to. It's for the older generation who find it difficult to adapt to. Like, you get a new phone, for example, you get any new digital device, you give it to a young 11-year-old and he knows his way around it, right? You give it to an older person and they're looking for somebody. They look left, right, and say, who shall I call? And can you set this up for me? And that happens a lot. Well, I'm not going to go far. It happens with me. You know, I have to pass it on to my son and tell him, sort this out. And that he's done it very fast. So that is where we are today. You're listening to Z on the Ramadan Radio, 87.7 FM. Please do call us with your education aspirations and talk to us on 0116 482 2086, or you can WhatsApp us on 077 48 855 055. So today I have in the studio with me Sister Habiba Lunat Patel. So, Sister, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah for having me.
You are always welcome, Sister. We have met before when you've done radio with us here a few years back before COVID. Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Yeah. And COVID is March 2020, March 2021, and we've passed March 22. So how many years is that?
2 years, and it's just flown by. And you're talking about digitalization and that period of when we went into lockdown. It seems like everything became digitalized so quickly. Like overnight, everybody was expected to do everything online. So the students were learning, doing their school lessons online, people working from home online. So it's like overnight, everybody, they had to learn how to use those devices.
And we will discuss that more for the rest of the program. But Sister, I'd like you to introduce to our listeners right now your role in education. What exactly do you do in your field of work right now?
And so currently I work in a sixth form as part of an attendance and transition team. So I overlook the attendance of the whole school. That would also include the punctuality and then the behavior as well. Also do the transition, so the admissions into the college, and then I help with the post 18, so their applications to universities as well. Prior to that, I did work in a secondary school. I started off, my journey in education started off as a teaching assistant. From there, I started covering lessons, so I started doing cover supervisor. So as teachers were absent, I would take their lessons. which would include sometimes coming up with last minute lesson plans as well, to get through the day, what the students would need to learn. From there, I progressed on to being a high-level teaching assistant, and then moved into pastoral.
Now, you call it lesson plan. Here at the radio, we call it show plan.
Yeah, I think you need to have a plan for
And
everything.
if you plan to fail, you fail to plan. So all of you young people listening right now, I want you to remember that, and I want you to say it like I'm saying it. If you plan to fail, you fail to plan.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen to you. So try to say it right now after me. Fail to plan,
Fail to plan,
plan to fail.
plan to fail.
So FTP, fail to plan.
Absolutely.
Right.
And sometimes it's like you have the plan, but most of the time you're winging it, I think most teachers will agree that you have that plan, but you always have to be ready for the inevitable happening, and then or you wing it to make it look like as though that was planned to happen.
Of course, and we have a very good teacher who has joined us here for Radio Ramadan this year, and she's absolutely brilliant. She is the one who initiates and shows and makes sure that that plan is followed. And if there's no show plan, you're in trouble.
That's Sabiha, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't say names here on the radio, but you let the cat out of the bag, right? And she's very strict on these matters, you know.
Okay.
So we have, Habiba may need to switch on the mic. So he means you have to switch on to say here,
I'll
right?
move on to the other.
Yeah, so we are live on Ramadan Radio, and we deal with the technical issues as we go along. So this is what happens in live radio. You take it as it comes, and you go along with the flow, and so on. So sister today is explained to us about her work in attendance, and do you get involved in any pastoral issues?
Yes.
This is a very important part of the education system,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes.
So this tied up with attendance and the punctuality routines. So Sister Habiba has been doing that in secondary schools and now in the sixth form.
Yes.
Right. So I'm going to take it back even to a nursery school.
Yeah.
Your education life will start at nursery.
Absolutely.
So we always say it very fast here: nursery, primary, secondary, uni, out
and
of the system, go get a job
in the real life
and start paying some taxes.
Yes.
Right, become an asset. So when we enjoy our education system, what's the reason? Why do we go to do our further education? Apart from our spiritual education, what's the reason?
Further education, do you mean like post-16?
No, I mean like what's our aspiration worldwide, to go, like if you go to India, or you go to any third world country, every parent invests in their child, so they will go hungry if they have to ensure that they have money put aside for fees to pay for their children to go to education.
Yeah, I think every parent's dream is for their child to have better than what they had, or maybe something that they didn't have, and they know that education is the best way, and maybe sometimes the only way to achieve those goals. You have to. A child is always learning. From the moment they're born, a child is always learning. So, when you give them toys to play, they learn how to, maybe if it's a puzzle, how to put things together, how things fit together. The child is always exploring. So that's why they say that, even Islamically as well, they say that the first years, 0 to 7 years, is child, they should be left to play. But through that play, they're always learning, and they pick up a lot of things by observing, especially those people around them. So that's how their habits and morals are formed.
So we have the modern day secondary schools. Of course, when I was in secondary school, they were not modern day schools. The schools were old, but we still managed very well.
Yeah.
Of course, my own personal experience when I came to the school, because I came as a refugee, and you're 10, 11 years old, and the kind of questions they ask you is that, do you know your alphabet, right? They ask you, do you know your alphabet? And the students, they looked at you and they don't really understand or appreciate or have any experience of diversity. There was no such word as diversity in those days, right?
No, no.
So I don't know what they called it in the 70s,
Yeah.
but you think that we were 10-year-old when we came here and we spoke 5 languages.
Wow.
Now, you tell me, how many students here today
At that
can
age.
boast that at the age of 10 they could speak 5 languages,
No, I don't think so.
right? So isn't that amazing?
It is. I mean, and I think at that age nowadays, our children are losing their mother tongue. So, let alone being able to from home speak 2 languages, at least the mother tongue and the language of the country we live in. By the time they start school, they lose their mother tongue. Like if I take my own children's example, I've got 3 boys. I taught all 3 of them to speak in our mother tongue, which is Gujarati, and I mean the eldest one has retained it. He speaks very well. The middle one, he understands it. He speaks it, but you can tell he'll struggle sometimes. But my youngest one, so I've got a big gap between my middle and the youngest, and he was born in 2005, and until the age of about 3, when he went to nursery, he spoke nothing but Gujarati. He could speak English, he understood it, but he just spoke in Gujarati. And when I took him places, it would be like people would be shocked that in this day and age, there's a child that speaks such fluent Gujarati. As soon as he started school, he started having speech problems, and we couldn't figure out why. And I think when I look back, it was because he didn't know which language to communicate in, and then he's chosen to just speak in English. And
How old was he at that time?
so he was about 3.5. I even took him to the health visitor to have him assessed, and she said, "I'm sure you've got nothing to worry about," and it wasn't. And it turns out, as soon as he started communicating fluently in English, it's like he switched off his Gujarati brain, and he couldn't. Then he got to a point where he couldn't communicate with his grandparents. If he had to ask them or answer their questions, he'd ask me, "How shall I say that?" So, which I found really strange. That at one point he could speak fluently, and now he can't. And then this language specialist told me that, "Don't worry, it will come back," and I can see it coming back now. And we see that so much in our young children that, and I think we're diverting a bit, but I think it's all part of learning. Is that we're losing our mother tongue, and it's amazing that you're saying that you could speak 5 languages.
Well, we lived in a community.
Yeah.
Like in our area, we had people who spoke Punjabi, people who spoke Urdu, and people who spoke Gujarati. So we embraced these languages because we lived together with these communities. And Swahili, which is a mother tongue of East Africa,
Yeah.
which in the country Uganda was abolished after Idi Amin was disposed of, and they kind of said this language was a language which was predominantly spoken by him and his tribe, because we came from a very tribalistic society.
Okay, yeah.
So that's why you learn these languages and you're pretty fluent in them,
Yeah.
because you're speaking to the people who live next door to you
Yeah.
or around the corner, and the climate was different there.
Yes. Yeah.
The people were more united,
Okay.
and you kind of celebrated Diwali, Eid, you enjoyed every festival. So that spirit we did not have when we came here.
Okay.
So we came here, a united community, and we came here, we started to learn about divisions and so on. So in poverty, and you have no money, you tend to be more united.
Yes.
Your learning skills excel. When you come here, you live in luxury.
You become independent of everybody.
You do. You tend to lose touch.
Yes.
So we've been discussing this. We're going off track a little bit now,
Yes, yeah.
but important is that we are now 70 plus diversities in the city, and we are coexisting. And we've been talking about these 2 or 3 programs that are we integrating. So when we go to schools, today's modern day secondary school that you have had experience of, how many diversities in those schools?
Yeah. Currently, where I work, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of diverse students from lots of different backgrounds, and you can see, they do work well together. They do get on. The respect is there, But then at the end of the day, you can see that sometimes, the people do tend to, you have the odd few that do mix, but people do then tend to stick to their own kind. I hate saying it as it is, but that is the truth. And I think we say integration should be there, but there is some sort of like.
So
barrier.
I think like that starts from your nursery school, isn't it? Like you're now talking about tribalistic kind of a behavior where children, they stick together because they say, oh, he's from my crew.
Yeah.
And this is an issue that we will be discussing with throughout the week as to how we can effect change on that.
Yeah. But there's always the, activities taking place to encourage, integration. And the respect, there's never a lack of respect. Respect is always there. I have to say, the students are very respectful of each other, of each other's beliefs, alhamdulillah, where I work, the Muslim students, they all pray the Jummah on a Friday, and there's not been any backlash from any of the other communities of students, and likewise, we respect anything that's going on from their faith as well. So alhamdulillah, I have to say that our students are very, very respectful.
Of course, faith is great, and one of the pillars of our community development initiatives is always to encourage all organizations, whether they're at work or at school or any sporting venue, anywhere, that make accommodations and allowances for all faiths. Yeah. And then we also then can spill over to the food that we eat.
Yes, absolutely.
And so on. So we're going to be discussing that also throughout the week, and we can work hard to attain some good results at the end of it all, right? So today's secondary schools do have a lot more facilities than the secondary school of old. So as you are aware, many of the old schools are gone.
Yes.
They've been demolished or they have been refurbished. And when you compare them, today's school, they're state of the art.
Yeah, I think most of the schools in Leicester, they're all, so even if they have been around for a long time, they've had new buildings made, so the old ones have been demolished, and new ones are state of the art with all the technology that's needed to keep up with the demands of modern day education. I think they have to have the Wi-Fi's in all the rooms, interactive whiteboards, which in our days were blackboards, and then I think towards the end of my education, they became whiteboards with the marker pens, but I didn't have any of the interactive whiteboards. But nowadays, it's like everything's digitalized,
Well, I was from the blackboard and chalk era.
Yeah.
Right? So I remember the different colors of chalks,
Yes.
and those days are gone. So, of course, when some young kid today is talking to somebody from that era, they switch off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But what I've done, sister, what have I done? Tell me.
What have you done?
I have adapted to change
Yes, yeah.
very fast. Otherwise, you can't keep up
No,
with
you
them
can't.
and they can't keep up with you.
No.
So that's how you have to be, because today, to connect with the young is what? Nursery, primary, secondary, could be anywhere right up to university. And because the kind of work, I do a lot of work with the younger people in enterprise, in the business world, to empower them in their aspirations to start their businesses. So I learn a lot of things from them, and I see how far ahead they are in the social media and in the digital world, where they're in. It's incredible. They live on that iPhone or the Android, and they run their lives on that.
Yeah.
So hence there is imminent change, isn't there?
There is, yes. And with regards to digitalization, I think you see nowadays, like a lot of the lessons in COVID, when it moved to online, you see a lot of the universities are keeping that hybrid education where they still have a lot of their lessons online, so they will only have to go in for part of the week, or maybe just 1 or 2 lessons, and they can still do some of them online from home or catch up on recorded lessons. So there's so much flexibility available for them, whereas compared to back in the day where you had to attend every single one on site.
So that flexibility, I think, is absolutely important because I've seen this work in Finland and Sweden,
Yes.
in these Nordic countries.
Yeah.
They have got another level of education system there.
And I think in those countries where I think here we've always done everything face to face, on site, and it's COVID that changed everything. Whereas there's countries where they'd have really severe weather conditions, like some rural parts of Canada, even probably Scandinavia, where they have a lot of snow and they literally cannot get to school because that school is such a long way away. They've been having these online lessons or hybrid lessons for a long time before, or they'd be given their work, and this is what you need to do while you're at home, stuck, not being able to get to school, and then giving your whatever you've done at home after when you can get to school. So, a lot of the countries have already had hybrid lessons even before we did during COVID, and it's something that we've adapted to. And I think
how has it worked in those 2 years?
it worked really well. For us, we were able to manage 99% attendance during COVID to our hybrid lessons, solely because as part of the attendance team, we would the teachers would do an online register, and anybody that hadn't logged in, we would actually call home, ask them, why they haven't logged in, or maybe this, because the routine all changed. They were mostly just either they'd slept in or they were having connection issues. So we'd get them to log in. We'd actually go into the lesson to see they have logged in, and then it's the teachers.
So when they log in,
yeah.
what is their focus and attention span compared to when they're in a class of 30? What is the average class today in secondary school?
Secondary school is probably 28 to 30. For us, we have here about 20 at 24. It's probably not as, and you can't monitor it as you can in a classroom. But, for us, the teachers would be constantly, asking them to type answers in the chat box or randomly asking the questions to see that they are still on track. And they would be monitored on who's engaging and who's not engaging. Because you have to have some form of engagement from the students, and then the quality of work that's produced from them. And obviously, if it's not up to standard, then we'd make a call to parents or to the student as well.
And it worked well?
It did. It worked really well.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
that's great news.
Yeah. So for us, our students, they didn't miss any learning during COVID. And I'm sure that was the same for most secondary schools. I think primary would be a bit more difficult because to expect those students to sit in front of a screen and learn is not the same for young children. So it would be more like the teachers would give them something to do, and or something that they had to complete over the week, because to have them, so they'd log in at least once a day, so they've had some sort of contact with their teacher. But to have them sat in front of the screen from like a normal school day at home, it's very difficult because they're not in that same educational environment. They might be more interested in what mum and dad are doing, and I suppose if mum and dad had work to do from home as well, to ensure their young children are logged in, must have been very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, if the mom and dad, maybe they're not there, or they have got COVID, or
Yes.
the one member has gone to work,
Yeah.
it can be difficult.
Yes, yes.
So what age of children you are referring to now who are prone to learning at home with using a laptop?
So everybody had to learn. I think for the young children, the parents probably had to help them to log in. But now I think that in this continuing forward, I think the university students, that they're still expected to have that online access and carry on doing a lot of their lessons online as well. I do know of students who have enrolled from abroad at universities in the UK, but they've been managed to do the like a whole term still staying in their country abroad.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't have that experience because a lot of students that came here, I was involved with them, supporting them during that period of COVID, and they were very sad and upset that they could have sat in their country, in India, and done what they're doing here.
Yes, yeah.
Which they were sad that they had to pay money, because it's not the course only.
They had to pay for the accommodation.
Accommodation and that in itself added a lot of stress and anxiety upon them
It did, yes.
and disturbed their education,
I cannot-
because
yeah.
it's a lot of money. And one student, I remember, he was literally in tears to say, my dad, all his life he saved money for me to come here
Yeah.
and study, and I feel that his money has been wasted.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the students that I know, they managed to get home just before the lockdown was announced. So they knew that it was impeding, that there was going to be a lockdown. So rather than get locked here and not being able to travel, they were able to make it back home. But I totally understand, and I think there were students who had also paid for their student halls accommodation, but they never ended up living there, but they never got their deposits back. Or some were
No.
still-
So this is an
Yeah.
ongoing matter. Still, letters are flying in every day, and I don't think that they're getting much joy out of that. And once your money is left, your pocket is gone,
Yes,
and
yeah.
it's very hard to get it back. Now, you take a transition to another country like Uganda, where they just shut education off for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
It's like they didn't care about and put any emphasis on education, right? And that was extremely sad, because those kids, they've lost their lives.
Yeah, they lost out on 2 years. So
2 years is a long time.
I think we have to be really grateful for all the effort that the teaching staff did put in during COVID. You know, they had their own. If they were teaching from home, they probably had their own family,
Yeah.
and you know, like if they had young children, to see to them as well, and on top, you know, carry on teaching our students as well.
So we've seen many areas of dysfunctionality in these third world countries, and we are, for that reason, taking 4 young aspiring politicians to these countries for a week out on a learning curve, so that they can see why they are dysfunctioning, and they come back much better for it,
Oh, that's good.
to see life on the other spectrum. And they come back to England, and they can be more of an asset, because you will have fast tracked them to learn on the other side of the world. Because we live in a global world today,
Yes.
whether we like it or not, and we can support each other. We can see the plight
Yeah.
and appreciate ourselves even more.
Yes.
Appreciate the good conditions that we have, and how we can make them even better. So now we're going to talk about something very interesting: attendance.
Yes. Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you how it used to be in the old days.
Okay.
Now, in the old days, you all sat in the classroom,
Yeah.
and the teacher sat there at the front, and he's got his card with all the surnames of all the 25, 30 students in the class, and he would go Beezer, Bagley, Olcott, like that, in alphabetical order, or he'll say all the names. And you sat there waiting for your name, and then you have to put your hand up and say, yes, sir,
Yeah.
and they tick you off.
Yes.
Now, somebody then had to take all that and convert it into your attendance. And looking back, I don't envy that job.
No, I don't want to think about it, because I think nowadays everything is done on a centralized system.
So explain to all our listeners right now, because a lot of you listeners will have gone through that period of attendance, and how attendance was recorded in schools. And sister, tell us now how it's done today.
So nowadays, all schools have multi-information systems, various kinds, and the register is done on there centrally, so electronically, so the teacher does it in the classroom. We oversee the whole attendance picture, and we can see which teachers. Everybody's done their register. Once it's done, we can see who's present, who's not present. If anybody's absent, then we will send a truancy call. So from where I work, we send a truancy call out. So that lets parents know that your child hasn't registered today. So we expect them to get in touch with the reason for absence. So it's so much easier than in the old days, where everything was done on pen and paper and card, or paper, or the register book, and then it goes to the officers. But because it's done centrally, it tells you then, exactly how many students are here, your data's there, your figure, your attendance figure for the day, Students are expected to maintain a high level of attendance solely because...
What percentage you're talking about?
96 to 97%. Schools vary where I work, we expect 97% from students, but I do know that some schools will accept 96 as well. 96 to 97, we say is good attendance. Anything above is excellent. Anything below, so once you get to 95, it becomes satisfactory. Anything below 94 is a cause for concern, and below 90% is classed as persistently absent. So if, like when I've spoken to parents, they think, 90%, that's good, isn't it? And actually it's not, because if a student's attendance falls to 90%, that's like they're missing one day every 10 days. And just missing even half a day of your education.
Okay, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
How many students attain 100% in a class? Example, average.
I'd say at least probably about over 50% can do attain 100%. The concern is more with those that, obviously during COVID, it's been hard, because if students have tested positive, they've had to stay home. It's not been their choice. So in the current climate, the COVID absences, although we've got to record it, when we look at the overall picture, we take that out. But it's where there's staggering patterns, they have odd days off here and there. That becomes very concerning. When attendance drops below 90%, schools will ask for medical evidence for your absences. So after that, if you can't provide evidence, your absences will be unauthorized, and then that's when the education welfare officer will step in. You might start getting visits home. A plan will be put into place to ensure, to find out the reasons why there's, obstructions to your child attending school. There'll be targets put in place to meet that, to ensure that your child does attend school, because attendance and achievement, they both correlate together. Your child can only achieve if they're present in the classroom.
Of course, this is all fantastic information from you. And I'm working in a primary school at the moment in Uganda. And I'm like thinking that these things you are talking about are absolutely, this is a school from maybe the last century.
Okay.
With those kind of things you're talking about are totally unreal for them.
Yeah.
So imagine they have to go with what they have.
Yeah.
Right. Their first priority is to find a pencil, a pen, and a piece of paper.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And I'll share with you with some videos after the program to give you an insight into how it is in the third world.
Yes.
And that's a government school.
Okay.
So what you're talking about is a government school in a developed country like England. Yeah. And I've talked about yesterday. Yeah. You've talked about how it is today.
Yes.
So shall I give you a little sneak into tomorrow?
Go on.
So the attendance system throughout your school, every student is walking wherever he is, he's monitored.
Okay.
In terms of facial recognition, retina scans, and he will walk into his school. The time he's walked through that door will be recorded.
Okay.
And even if that kid is going to the toilet, for example, when he's gone in, when he's come out, the entrance door will record everybody. So this is the digitization at what level is going on. And because I work also in this field, and these are tests being conducted now to see how effective they will be in the future.
I mean, I can see that coming into place and see it working. And as somebody who works in attendance, it would be ideal, but it's kind of like infringes on, I think, your personal rights, and it kind of makes you feel like, like there won't be any trust left. So we have to give.
It's called adapt to change.
Yeah.
In the beginning it feels like infringement, but down the line you can see the efficiency from it, and your attendance and your whole persona, your performance. It's going to be there on a screen.
Yeah, it's going to. Yeah, I can see that nobody's going to. Then there's no chance of truanting by any students, or even hiding anywhere in the building. I mean, at the moment, currently for us, if so, we have the morning register, and then you have a register for every lesson, which is also done electronically. Now, if a child, and like you said, so for us where I work, the students all scanning in the morning, so we can see exactly who's coming and what time as well. So if students come in and then they're not present in a lesson and they're supposed to be, we will physically go out and look for that child in the building. There's no opportunity, there's no possibility for them to leave site because all the gates are locked. So we will go and physically look for them. And at our place, because we've set those standards from the start, our expectations are high. We've not had, we'll have at the start of the year a couple of students try and, not go to the lessons, but they know that, we will go out and look for them. And if we can't find them, we will call home to say that your child's not attended in the lesson. So, once they know, they haven't tried missing. But what you're saying, if that's there, we know where each student is every single moment that they are on site. I don't know how, the acceptance of it.
This is only for a school, not only for a school, but everywhere.
Yes.
You'll have digitization like that, and it's amazing. In some countries like China, you're walking on the street and the cameras, there are thousands of cameras that identify you.
Yeah, I have
from facial recognitions. You've seen some YouTube videos on that.
Documentaries, yes, and they track where you go, what you do, but that kind of like feels like an infringement on your, on your privacy. I don't know how I would personally feel about that. We need to have some sort of form of independence and privacy still available to us.
Yeah, that's a different subject. Yes, on another day, we can do a program on just that, right? Now, we're going to discuss attendance now. You can see that 50% are attaining 100%. Then the other 50% are falling below. And what do you say about what is the percentage who fall into a truancy stage?
So I won't say truancy stage, it's the persistently absent stage. I'd say it depends school by school, but where I am at the moment, it would probably be, it's very less. You're talking about less than 10%, but that makes a big difference.
So we probably are not saying that that is a country norm, but this is one example of one school at 10%. So now, then that requires special focus.
It does.
And this is where the next department kicks in. We call that the pastoral care department.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll try our own interventions first, meet with the students, see if there's any barriers, what's happening, talk to them about the importance of attending as well. A lot of the time they just think that, I was tired and I just couldn't get out of bed, sometimes it's even making too many appointments during the school day. It's really important when parents do make appointments for their children, they try and keep it out of the school day, because that causes a lot of disruption for the students and the teachers, the lessons, and they've got to catch up afterwards. So certain appointments, it's inevitable, you don't have a choice, you have to take what's given, like hospital appointments, orthodontic appointments. But opticians are open on weekends, you can visit them in the weekends or even after school. Dentists as well,
You probably have, in pastoral, you've heard every
child matters,
child matter going. So I was involved in a pastoral at a school, and I would sit in there and listen to each child and the issues and everything. The sad thing for me at that time was to see what was the social conditions, family conditions of that child.
Yes.
So what I learned was that every child who had a problem, the background behind that child was not very pleasant.
No, there's always...
there was issues of domestic violence, there were issues of single parenting, and that effect on the parent transferred to the child.
Yes, yeah.
And this has been very disturbing for me at that time. And very sad also that you were helpless just listening in, where you wish you could do something for that child. And you were going through moments where you wanted to take all these children and help them, support them, in the pastoral department. So the experience is that there is issues.
There is absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
every child who has an attendance issue, there's
something.
underlying factors.
But the fact is that at least if they're in, then you know that they're safe. You know they're going to get at least, they're probably students from that kind of background. They're probably, majority of them are going to be pupil premium as well. So at least they're going to get a hot meal or a meal in school. They've eaten. They're in a safe environment. They're with their friends. And another thing is when students are missing a lot of school as well, friendship issues become a problem. So you find that their friends have spent the day together and they've moved on, and they've kind of like lost track of what their friends have been doing that day. Although in this day and age you can catch up on social media, but then sometimes what happens is that that's when the bullying starts as well, or there's different perceptions because the students might be talking on a group chat of something that's happened, and because a particular child has not been in school, they don't know what's going on, they're not part of the conversation, they feel left out. So a lot of the social aspect of is very important as well for attending school.
So attendance, punctuality, that Absolutely. Is like attending on time, and pastoral, right? These all three are very, very crucial, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of it comes together for us, when we speak to our students about attendance and punctuality, we try to relate it to the world of work. If you start a job at 8 o'clock, you're not going to walk through the door at 8 o'clock. You have to get there at least 10, 15 minutes before to show that you're a good employee, you're ready to start on time.
Sister, I'm telling you, I try to be like that here at the radio, right?
Yeah.
To be here 10, 20 minutes before, and it's a competition between me and the producer who gets here first.
Okay.
And today is the first day that I beat him.
Is it because he's not here?
No, he didn't come on time. And I got very happy because I got here early. Yeah. And so on. Of course, there are other people who listen in.
Yeah.
And in the evening, they catch you up at iftar and they ask you, Zed, what time did you come this morning? Like they're checking up on you.
No, but absolutely. But for us Muslims, time is something very important. Allah talks about it in the Quran. And we're told to be, we have to pray our salah on time, everything, we have to pray our zakat on time. When we break our fast, it has to be on time. We have to be really mindful and watchful of our time. We'll be questioned about how we spent our time on the Day of Judgment, So that respect should filter through on how we pass our day as well. So, that starts with instilling that respect in our children, that ensuring that we can get them, when they're in nursery and primary, we can get them to school on time. And a lot of the schools, although they say that, the school day starts at 8:45, 9 o'clock, that doesn't mean that we drop them off at that time. I'm sure a lot of the schools have breakfast clubs as well, if you need to do several rounds,
sister,
drop them off earlier.
We don't talk about breakfast club in iftar and all that during the month of Ramadan. Yeah. It's a no-go area. So it's very important, the attendance, punctuality, the pastoral care. We've gone through today percentages approximately, and the value before education even starts.
Yeah.
We focus on this foundation to get right, isn't it?
Yes,
it's one of the first building blocks of our education system.
Yes.
Now, you and I, we both had experience in education system here. So you're probably wondering where my experience came from in the schools, but I'm not going to tell you right now. Yeah. I want to let you keep guessing, and I'll tell you after the program. Yeah. And that's how I was introduced to the education system. But we've also discussed today the crossover from where we are today in beautiful first world system compared to what we have across the other side of the world. But you will see that in a country like India, you have to ask yourself, well, they don't have all what we have.
No, they don't know.
Yet they are far, far ahead of us in terms of tomorrow's technologies in software.
Yeah.
And software is all about coding languages.
Yeah.
And look where they are in comparison to where we are.
Yeah, they're kind of the top of the field, aren't they?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
at the age of 8, a kid is coding and learning the languages and is designing and developing. And it's absolutely amazing, isn't it?
It is, yes, yes.
So obviously, we love to collaborate with them to learn. But what is the reason for their successes?
Yeah.
Of course, we can never compete because it's a country with 1.2 billion population, if not more, and the percentage of their super experts in software is going to far outweigh ours because we are 66 million here.
Yes.
So if you look at the numbers, they're always going to beat us, aren't they?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Like that.
I mean, you're talking about India, and I've just remembered a documentary. And it was a TED talk long time ago, and it was about this man in India who, so his office, the back of his office, looked over the slums in India. So on one side is all the rich and developed side, and on the other side was all the underdeveloped and where the poor people lived. And so what he did was, it was like a study, an experiment. He made a hole in the wall and just put like a computer there to see what would happen. And a child came up and he started exploring. So this child had never seen a computer before, didn't know what it was, but just started looking at it and playing around with it. Within a few days, there was a few children there that were trying to figure out. And within, I think, the month, they had figured out how to use the computer. They'd learned the languages of how to use the computer, and they were absolutely fluent and had,
How
literally
old?
taught themselves.
How old were they?
They were probably talking about 7 to 10 years old.
Wow.
And that experiment, so the TED talk, the person doing the talk was saying that a child, even if you leave them to it, will learn in their own time, in their own ways, but it's just giving them
The opportunity.
the opportunities. Yes. So all it needed was a computer, and with no instructions, nothing, but that child did it. So it's like going back to our young babies and their development, gives them the opportunities, the toys that they need to learn the skills, the grasping, the holding, learning how to crawl. Or you leave them, they'll start rolling over, they start crawling, and they start exploring, start trying to stand up. It's making sure that child is in that environment. Whereas if you keep that child cooped up, they'll never learn how to crawl or to walk.
So this is very interesting. It reminds me of every day, literally, we talk about this, is that on the gravestone of the great Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer of all time, he says that the service to others, when we make a difference to somebody else, is the rent that we pay for our home in heaven, our room in heaven.
Yes, yeah.
And that is...
I really like that quote.
You've read that as well.
I have, yes. And it's one of the ones that I do keep going back to, because it reminds you, when you do help others, it reminds you why you're helping others.
Yeah. And that's why, we do what we do here at Radio Ramadan, that our sole mission is to support, to help with all the charities that come here. They raise funds, and it makes you shed a tear, because like one of the charities is doing some fantastic work called One Nation across Afghanistan and across Syria, and how much effort and passion they put into delivering aid to the needy. And it is an absolute, it's unbelievable. Those people who do the work, I want all the listeners right now to know that these are special people who go out there, they reach out there. God has chosen them for that task.
Yes.
So He has selected them, hasn't He?
Yes, yeah.
And they go out and do that work, and the passion they put into it is just unbelievable. And we are here supporting them. And anyone out there doing good in the community or doing good in charity abroad, always support them. You may not have means to do it yourself, but never fear not to support them, because when you support them, you are doing good.
Yes.
And Allah says, always support those who are doing good.
Yes,
Not
absolutely.
100 people are going to go out there and do good, but if out of those 100, 10 are doing good, the other 90, if if they're supporting them, imagine how those 10 will excel
Yes, yes.
in that. So in the education today, we've had a quick 40 minutes of discussion, or 40 or 50 minutes. We've been mainly talking about attendance and punctuality and the pastoral care.
Yes, yeah.
So how these three are so well connected and so important that your child, the value of him attending punctually, which is...
I think it's, I'd just like to add, it's really important to have a good routines, because routines, that's what sets you up for the day, and for every day to have the same routine, getting up at the same time, going to bed at the same time. That's very important and should be, something that's from day one, from when you have your children, having those routines and adapting to those routines as well. We see in Ramadan our routine slightly changes, but we've got to understand that we still have to get to work on time. Our children still have to get to school on time. I know they're going to be a bit more tired, but ensure that they have they go to sleep after they come home from school, so they're catching up on missed sleep. Sleep is very important, and nowadays we see like our young people, our young children especially, spending a lot of time on their devices, and they're not going to bed on time, so then they're not being able to wake up the next morning, or they're too tired for school. So very, very important to have those boundaries and routines at home.
So we're coming to the end of the program now, and sister, I would just like you to explain to us that schools, are they staying the same, or are they moving fast to adapt to change?
So we're currently still carrying on with live lessons if students are testing positive for COVID, but I don't know how long that we will be carrying on. I believe a lot of these other schools, I don't know how many still are, some aren't. Some have moved on to just on-site teaching, and if they're ill, if they get COVID, it's counted as an illness and they just stay home ill. But obviously, we can't continue providing full-time online lessons to students, because then that will mean that we'll never get them through the door. And solely for their mental well-being and their social development, we do need to have them in an environment where they're with their peers and with the teachers on site. So we would encourage students to attend where they can. So I don't know how the government's moving forward with the online teaching, but I do know that universities are continuing with hybrid teaching.
Of course, that is adapt to change. And all of you listening in right now, please learn the importance that in the future, with this digitization upon us, if your child is not attending punctually, there will be discipline issues, and all of this will be your digital file. Your digital file. So that can start from primary, a pattern will show up on the screen, from secondary to university, and when you finally say, I'm going to go get a job, your digital file will determine you.
Absolutely.
As a character for tomorrow's world.
Absolutely.
So please take note of these things, that it's very important that we follow these punctuality and attendance issues, sister. So I'd like to thank you today for coming and joining us on this very important topic for the Education Week. And if you'd like to say a message to our listeners.
Jazakallah for having me. And the message is that just ensure that your children are attending school wherever they can and being on time. Ensure they've got good routines, you've got boundaries in place at home with regards to devices, and they're getting to bed on time, waking up on time. If you are struggling, please speak to your schools, because help is available. I'm sure